There are just thousands of fantastic features of life that can tell us why evolution is wrong, why it is false, and how we can know that there is a creator of life. And today we're going to focus in on one really awesome molecular machine called mTOR complex 1. And this is the cells manager, one of the cells managers. I call it a micromanager because it's really small. Anyway, it does so many functions. One of the things that it does is it tells the cells when it's time to make proteins, when it reacts to the environment and it's like, okay, it's time to make proteins. It tells the ribosome, hey, get to work making the proteins. It also tells the cell it's time to make lipids. It's time to recycle things. It sits on the lysosome and it does all of these processes. It basically manages the growth or the autophagy of the cell. So this is an awesome molecular machine, and I'm going to tell you why this is extremely problematic for evolution, why this cannot evolve, and I hope that you will clearly see that. So I want to actually start by talking just a little bit of fun before we start. One really special viewer is Mehrshad, and Mehrshad is the one who suggested to me and introduced me to mTORC1. And so thank you, Mehrshad, for suggesting this. Mehrshad is a molecular biologist who sees the problems with evolution. And so thank you, Mehrshad, for introducing me to this awesome molecular machine. Okay, so, as I said, this is like micromanager controlling so many functions that happen in the cells. Now, what's interesting is we only found out about this, maybe like 20, 25 years ago. And so I linked a video in the description of this video. That's one of the co-discoverers of the function of mTORC1. And he talks about how when they first started trying to figure out what this protein complex was, they didn't think it did anything because just some of the stuff that they were looking at, the way that they opened up the cell, they couldn't tell that it did anything. And so this is a good example of how sometimes, evolutionists will say, oh, we have just so much junk, junk in our cells, junk in the DNA, when really they actually just don't know what it does. And for a long time, it looked like this didn't do anything, when in fact, it's absolutely essential to the cells. So let's talk a little bit more about it, because not only does it control a lot of the functions of what's going on in cellular processes, but it is in touch and regulating like more than 100 other molecular machines, and it's part of an integrated system. It's not able to just function on its own. It has many processes that it is dependent on. So, this is an integrated system. This is something that requires many more than just one thing in place to work properly. So if we're going to talk about how this evolved, we have to not only think about the protein complex itself, but also all of the proteins that it interacts with and all of the system functions that it interacts with in order to function properly. So what is this little molecular machine made of? mTORC1 is really, it's actually a bunch of proteins put together. So we think of proteins, it's a protein just sounds like a blob. Maybe it looks like a blob, but it's actually it is structured very precisely. And in order for this to work, it has 10 proteins, 5 unique ones. Okay. And without three of these are absolutely essential. Without these, the embryo will die. So these are like essential to life. Now, there are 2 that are not present in some organisms or that you might be able to live without. But the core of this machine is absolutely essential. So what does that mean? That means if we're going to evolve this thing, we need at least 5 genes, okay? And what is a gene? Well, a gene is a big stretch of DNA with a lot of bits of information in the form of nucleotide, base pairs of nucleotides. And so, for the essential, I just put the 3 essential genes for this protein complex, the ones that you will die without. And what are those genes made out of? The mTOR gene has 156,000 base pairs. Okay, so think about all that information. That all has to be transcribed in order to make this little machine. So if you're going to evolve this machine, you have to evolve 156,000 bits of information for this to work properly, okay? And then now, not all of those end up getting used to make the protein. They have to be spliced, and that's another molecular machine that takes it after this is transcribed. Then it has to be, the spliceosome has to take it and remove some of the parts of the stretch of DNA or RNA. And so then it has to go and get built in the ribosome. Now, it's not just that gene. We have the other genes that have to make the other proteins. And the raptor gene is 421,500 base pairs. Okay, so these are making, and what these will end up making, these genes, are these extremely precise little proteins, and composed of over 1,000 amino acids. And so they have to be folded up just right. And then once you get all of these proteins developed, then they have to actually come together. They have to stick together. And these are transcribed from different chromosomes. So we have to think about evolution getting, all of these bits of information. Where does this information come from? And then how does it work together harmoniously? I mean, this is all supposed to be happening by evolutionary processes of random mutations plus natural selection. Well, how does nature select from something that it has no function while it's waiting for all of these mutations to develop? How do these mutations work and coordinate themselves together? Okay, is there an evolutionary explanation for this? No, there is no evolutionary explanation for this. Now, it's not to say they're not attempting to figure out an evolutionary explanation, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But let's talk about the main problems. Why is mTORC1 a problem for evolution? Well, first of all, think about what you're saying. If this evolved, you're saying a mindless process produced a machine that manages cellular processes, that has the knowledge or programming to manage cellular processes. So where did that knowledge and programming come from? How did those bits of information, first of all, come together to form functional proteins that can be added to other proteins to make this machine? And where did it get the specified information, the ability to be able to perform all of the functions, to direct all of these proteins and interact with all of these molecular machines? So that has to be explained by evolution, and there is no explanation for that. Okay, so it's just assumed to have happened. Now, another problem for evolving mTORC1 is that this was fully evolved in the last eukaryotic common ancestor. Okay, so get this. This is there from the beginning. Okay, this is there at the beginning of eukaryotes. Okay, now some will say, well, from the last eukaryotic common ancestor. But the reason they say this is because it's in all eukaryotes, okay, except maybe like there's a few parasites that don't have it. but this is something that we see in all eukaryotes and that's essential. So how this had to be in the earliest eukaryotes, because without it, you don't live. And then that's a problem. Why? Because to get eukaryotes in the first place, they've got a lot of evolving to do, right? They've got to evolve a nucleus. They've got to evolve the nuclear pore complex. They've got to envelop that prokaryote and to get the mitochondria. There's so much going on to get a eukaryote. There's got to be chromatin. There's so much evolution that has to happen in that eukaryotic ancestor. So this is just adding to it. So anyone who tells you, oh, but you see, life was so simple in the beginning. No, it was not simple. Look, this is and they try to show you the layers, the geologic column. Oh, look at these simple organisms in the Precambrian. Look how simple they are. No, they are not simple. They are incredibly complex. And this is one of the many things that is in those ediacaran organisms that you see. Those are not simple. They have incredibly complex processes that are absolutely essential to life, even at that time. Okay, so the reason they say that it was around for, since the last eukaryotic common ancestor is because it's in all now. And so it would have either had to evolve separately or it was there from the beginning. So that's a problem because, like I said, there's so much evolution going on. There's so many things that need to evolve to get, eukaryotes. All right, next problem. You need those 5 de novo genes. You needed, which are together more than 500,000 base pairs. So all of that specified complex information, you need all of that. And you just get a few mutations in the wrong place, you are not going to get those proteins to develop. So you have to get all of that specified complex information, and it has to be really careful not to collect harmful mutations, because if it does, then that will, be the end of that protein complex. All right, so where do all those de novo genes come from? Okay, then on those protein complexes, you have binding structures that help them to bind together. Those proteins are being made separately, and then they are somehow finding each other and binding together in just the right way to make the machine that's needed to regulate these processes. I hope that when you are hearing this, you're realizing this is the product of a mind. This is not a mindless process. This is not something that nature can do. People will say natural selection. Nature can only select from what is already present. How do you get all of these things to develop? This is obviously the product of design, intention. This makes me want to fall on my knees and worship my creator, because everywhere I look, what he has made is so incredible. Okay, going on, more problems. Okay, I've already mentioned this. Genetic information is dispersed on the various chromosomes, and but it makes something that functions together. That is really strange. How do those genes know to evolve? How do they know what is needed for this protein complex? Where's the agent thinking of this? And that's the problem. You don't have an agent. You need all of these mutations to happen in just the right way to build this machine. Not going to happen by evolution. I'm sorry, there is no evolutionary explanation for this. Okay, finally, you need the integration and orchestration of numerous other molecular machines. This machine does no good on its own. It is part of an entire system that has to be in place. So where is the coordination? This obviously needs coordination. And we'll see that as we look at the evolutionary explanation for how this came about, which actually is very lacking, okay? I mean, first of all, there is no real attempt to show how this entire structure could have evolved. But there are some quite lame attempts, okay? And this is one of them. So this is a paper called The Evolution of the TOR Pathway. All right, and so here's what they say about how, this pathway evolved. And this is what they did. To obtain novel insights into the evolution of the TOR pathway, we performed phylogenetic analyses on the components of the TOR pathway, starting from the mammalian TOR pathway. Now, so what they are trying to do when it says phylogenetic analyses, what they mean is they are comparing the mTORC1 in all, or the TOR pathway in a bunch of different organisms. And then because they have the idea that one organism evolved into another organism and we all shared a common ancestor, they will line up what they think happened first, second, third, based on the comparisons between organisms. Now, that is completely theory laden. There is no actual evidence for the evolution of mTORC1 in this paper. Okay, all it is comparing organisms, assuming that evolution happened, and then trying to come up with a possible pathway based on what they see in the different organisms and when they think those organisms evolved. It never occurs to them to question whether this could have evolved. So going on, let me just read more about what they said. They said, to that end, we searched in 64 diverse eukaryotic genomes for homologous and orthologous genes for components of the TOR pathway. Okay, so again, they're just comparing different organisms, trying to look at how similar the genes are, how this might have happened. Okay, so, the main problem with that is just that it assumes that evolution happened. And so all of this, everything, you just want to, now it's become one of my favorite things to do, to just Google the evolution of something and read the papers, because what you'll find is there is no evidence given. It's always assumed that evolution has happened, and everything is based on that assumption. Okay, so let's see. They say the recent publication of genomes in highly divergent eukaryotic organisms, such as Naegleria gruberia, which is like an amoeba or something, now permits us to make detailed phylogenetic analyses of genes that played a key role in the TOR pathway. And get this, determine the earliest possible point of invention in evolution for each subunit. Okay, so again, what they're doing is they're stacking up. They're saying that the tree evolved this way, so they're trying to figure out when certain things happen based on the way that comparing the genes looks. Okay, so again, it's all an assumption that evolution happened. But this is interesting, this earliest possible point of invention. Now, what invents? Can a mindless process invent? Can nature invent? What chemical process invents? That is a problem. We know when we use the word invent, we are talking about an agent. We're talking about an intelligence. We don't have chemical processes that invent. So there's lots of little oopsies, and a lot of people like to say, well, we just use that language because it's more convenient. Try not using it. It's impossible not to use it, okay? I have never seen an evolutionary paper that refrains from using this kind of language that requires an intelligence, that requires an intention, that requires an agent. So you can't do it without it. And that's a problem, because that should show you right there that there is a designer, there is an intelligence, there is an agent responsible for this. Now, I love this. Okay, here's another paper trying to talk about the evolution of the mTORC mTORC1, and says exaptive evolution of target of rapamycin signaling in multicellular eukaryotes. Okay, now exaptive. What this is referring to is a evolutionary patchword. Okay, there are so many problems with evolution, and one of the big solutions that evolutionists try to use is they make up words that will help patch the problems of evolution. And then they just act like everything's okay. So, one of the patch words of evolution is a process they call exaptation, which means, well, it didn't really evolve to, it had another useful function. So they're able to like say that, well, the way it evolved is that it had another useful function, and then it just somehow added something that was also useful. So exaptation is like the idea that every step along the way there was something useful about this, before it came into its current function as it is right now. And so this is really just a way of patching an evolutionary problem. And what I mean by that is evolution, okay, part of the problem is what I mentioned before. Nature can only select from what is already present. It can't direct any evolution of what's not already there. And so you have to figure out how to get these complex molecular machines and other features of life to be selected, even when they don't really have there's no like function along the way. This is a problem. Like it's what good is half a wing? What good is half a heart? That kind of thing. Okay. So they want to say, well, that wing had a function. It kept the bird warm even before it was able to fly. Okay, so that's the kind of thing that they use exaptation for. So let's look what this one says. So it says that the TOR is a protein kinase that coordinates metabolism with nutrient and energy availability in eukaryotes. TOR and its primary interactors, Raptor and LST8, have been remarkably evolutionarily static since they arose in the unicellular last common ancestor of plants, fungi, and animals. Wow, like 1 billion years, this thing doesn't change? Incredible. How about it never did evolve? It was always there, and that's why it's still there. It's because it never did evolve. That's why you see it there from your beginning. Okay. And so I just wanted to point that out because that is, it's so surprising all the time how these things suddenly appear, but that's what I see whenever I look up these evolution of something. Oh, we're so surprised. It was always there. Okay. So it goes on, but the upstream regulatory mechanisms and downstream effectors of TOR signaling have evolved considerable diversity in these separate lineages. Here I focus on the roles of exaptation and adaptation in the evolution of novel signaling axes in the TOR network in multicellular eukaryotes, concentrating especially on amino acid sensing, cell-cell signaling, and cell differentiation. So basically what it's saying is, look, this core mTORC1 is like conserved, amazingly conserved, evolutionarily static, but these other processes that are involved are very diverse and seem to have, rapidly evolved. So, or it says considerable diversity, not rapidly evolved. But anyway, now we go on. And I just wanted to point out, this is really just a discussion of like what this molecular machine does. And this just stood out to me. It's kind of unrelated, but it says mammalian cells can have up to 10 million ribosomes. So think about this. These little mTORC1 protein complexes are directing, they're responsible for so much in the cell. And there's multiple ones in your cell. You don't just have one, you have many dispersed throughout your cell. But like I didn't know there were like 10 million ribosomes in a single mammalian cell. Dang, I mean, you look at the like diagrams and you see like, oh, one little ribosome or, one little ribosome drawn, one little mitochondria. You don't see like that, you don't think about how many of these complex machines. Ribosome is like not a simple thing. It's like a 3D printer. It's just incredibly complex and it's built of many proteins. And so, this is like, there's like 10 million of these in a single mammalian cell. Just think about that for a minute. Anyway, that's kind of a side note, but I just wanted to point out this other oopsie in their discussion of, the evolution of this. They said, based on current evidence across diverse taxa, mTOR evolved an early role in eukaryotes to maintain cellular homeostasis. Anybody see why that's a problem? It evolved to do something. It had an intention, right? This is something it was trying to do in the language they're using. It evolved in order to perform this homeostasis in the cell. Again, people will say, oh, we're just using that as a language convention. We don't really have to use that. It's just a shortcut. Try to do it without using the shortcut. Just see if you can actually do that. Because the problem is, this is at the foundation. There is a recognition that random mutations are not going to coordinate together because they don't have a mind, they don't have an intention, they don't care. Mutations do not care about making a machine for cellular homeostasis, okay? So mutations can't perform this. And so this is just one of my little things that I like to point out. So going on, it says thank you for sticking with me, by the way, and I will interact with the comments and stuff in a little bit, and I will give people a chance to join if they want to challenge this. If you think there's great evidence for mTORC1 evolution, just bring it on in. Let's show me. Why do you agree? Why do you disagree? So the link is at the top of the chat and in the description of this video, so you can join and share your evidence live. The steps of this signaling axis evolved at different times in the ancestors of humans. However, cestrins and the gator complex components evolved in the last common ancestor of animals, fungi, amoebozoa. Although cestrins were later lost in an ancestor of Baker's yeast. P53 evolved much more recently in an ancestor of modern animals, and many of its stress sensing roles are specific to vertebrates. Now, this is all assertions about evolution. Do you notice that? Is there any evidence given? I can tell you that throughout this paper, what they are using as evidence is just their comparison of various organisms. They're assuming evolution happened, and they're saying, hey, this happened, then, this got lost, then this evolved more recently. Why are they saying that? It's because of a commitment to their evolutionary timeline. So they say, okay, this organism has it this way, and this organism evolved before this, and so therefore this evolved at a certain time. And notice there's no explanation. You can read the paper yourself. I'm not going to read the whole paper, but there is no evolutionary explanation for how all of those things that I mentioned with the genes, the proteins, the coordination, how does it have the knowledge or the programming in order to direct all of these processes? How does it fit in with it? There is no evolutionary explanation for that. So very problematic. All right, going on, and we are going to stop with the boring stuff pretty soon, but I just had to highlight this also. So the pics are the gene family that this is made from, and it says all the extant pics were most likely present in the last eukaryotic common ancestor, and no new pics have evolved since. Wow, not just these genes, but all of these genes for these similar things, these kinases. Oh, None have evolved since? Dang, since the last eukaryotic common ancestor, like more than 1 billion years ago? Seriously? Like, if we can just evolve genes all the time, why don't we see any new genes evolving? Why aren't these, why are these so static? All right. The second critical insight is that PIC proteins have been remarkably static during eukaryotic evolution. The human and Naegleria, which is like an amoeba, TOR proteins are 43% identical and 50% similar across their entire length with no significant gaps in their alignment, despite 1.5 to 2 billion years since these lineages diverged. This degree of evolutionary stasis is comparable to systolic ribosome protein conservation. Wow, so more stasis. Okay, going on. Now, here's where they get into the exaptation. And again, so exaptation is just the idea that like it didn't evolve to get a certain function. It just so happened to fall into this new function because it was being used for something else. So this is basically showing vascular plants exapted TOR signaling to coordinate cell-to-cell transport carbohydrate allocation. Now, it explains all of how this works in plants. And then it says these new roles for TOR are an example of exaptation of the TOR metabolic sensing network to coordinate a newly evolved process. So, they're assuming where are they getting evidence that this is a co-opted thing? They're once again, they're not actually giving evidence. What they are doing is just comparing based on their evolutionary timeline, and they're saying plants came later, and so we think this process was co-opted, that it wasn't evolved to do this, but now it happens to provide this amazing process in plants. And so that's what you'll see throughout the literature, just assumption that evolution happened and no evidence needed. Hey, we know it evolved. And that is the thinking. So the role of TOR in the sync to source transition is a superlative example of exaptation in evolution of multicellular metabolism. TOR arose in the unicellular ancestor of eukaryotes to sense the availability of nutrients, metabolites, and energy, and promote anabolism only when all of these resources are available. Plants then co-opted the TOR signaling network to sense when the leaf begins photosynthesizing more carbohydrates, blah, 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 blah. Okay. The point is, again, here, they're accidentally inserting intention. They're inserting, hey, the reason this evolved was, hey, it needed to, sense the availability of nutrients. And so, but wait a minute, who decided what was decided that was needed? What in the cell said, hey, what would be really great? It would be really great if we could have a little machine that would manage all of these proteins and tell us when we need to grow and when we need to slow down. And yeah, that would be really great. Let's do that. Let's get something going over in those genes. Let's build some genes and make that happen. So it would be great to have that sensory capability. This is not part of evolution. You can't do that. There's no mechanism for doing that. You have to get mutations to randomly happen that don't harm the organism, that provide thousands and thousands of bits of new genetic information that just so happens to harmoniously work together to build this incredible protein complex that, it just so happens to sense and be able to direct all of these cellular processes. And it suddenly became essential. Like you can't live without it. Well, what were they living? How were these eukaryotic cells living without this? And for how long? And if they were living without it, then Why did it ever get inserted? How did it need to get inserted? Anyway, it's just a mess. Evolution is such a mess. I hope people can wake up, clear the fog, and actually just realize how absurd this theory is. This theory has no mechanism to produce the types of things that we see in life. Okay, I think this is the final thing I have on this. So it says mTOR did not adaptively evolve to confer this fitness advantage. How does he know? How do they know? But instead gained a role in the regulation of PD trafficking and the phloem sync to source transition through exaptation in this pre-existing metabolic sensor. So there's so much assumption here. So this person or these authors just know it did not evolve adaptively. It just, they know that it was an exaptation. It was a co-option. How do they know this? How do they know that? Is there any evidence given? No, absolutely none. So this is just so embarrassing that this is like all through the literature. So here again are the reasons mTORC1 is a problem for evolution. You've got a mindless process that's supposed to have produced a machine that manages incredible cellular processes, without which we don't live, we die. It has somehow obtained the knowledge and the programming, or knowledge/programming, in order to be able to do that. How does that happen? Where does that come from? Fully evolved in the last eukaryotic common ancestor, meaning we see no evolution of it. It was always there. So we have no clue how this could have come about. De novo genes, it needs 5 of them. It needs 5 incredibly, several of the genes are very large. And so it needs genes that work together. It needs binding structures and the ability to bind this together, separate proteins bound together to make this one machine that functions together perfectly harmoniously and integrates with all these other systems. So yeah, this is a mess. So not going to evolve. And so that's what I have to say about that. And thanks again to Mehrshad for introducing me to that. I had never heard of mTORC1 before just a few days ago. So anyway, love learning about those amazing processes in life. And Mehrshad is here. Oh my gosh, it's like so late where he's at. So let me see. I'm going to just put up some comments here. And so he says, and the strange part for evolutionists is that the machine's core system remained almost unchanged from unicellular eukaryotes to humans. Yes, it's just amazing. Oh, standing for truth. Hey, good to see you, Donnie. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for being here. Not evolution. I love that name. No evidence for eukaryotic cells evolved. They are irreducible. Yes, so many problems with eukaryote evolution. And we do have somebody joining. I'll let you back on in just a minute. I just want to put up a couple more comments. Junior said, even arranging molecules in the right order does not guarantee function. Since it is not guaranteed that information will actually be there. For all we know, it's just molecules in the right order, even with no information. Of course, God, of course, can create not only the right order molecules, but assign the information that for those molecules arrangement. Frank says, good point. It seems not only was this impossible for evolution to produce, but evolution then didn't change it afterwards. Yes, thank you. Mehrshad says, it's very stupid to think mindless trial and error, natural selection plus random mutation can give us a micromanager. Yes, exactly. Mehrshad said, I read that paper. It doesn't explain the evolution of mTORC1 complex. It only investigates its diverse function and assumes it has evolved by exaptations. Yes, exactly. And I could not find one that actually attempts to explain how this could have evolved. Snorkel the World says this is fascinating. Thank you. And Mehrshad says, I think exaptation made the complexity problem for evolution even harder because you need to adapt a component that was designed for a very different role to your required system for evolution. Thank you. And just put up a couple more, and then I'm going to let my guest on. What is amazing about mTORC1 is that it integrates multiple cells' data to decide whether to stimulate growth or not. If mTORC1 detects DNA damage, oxidation, attack, it stops cell growth. Yes, it's amazing. And in plants, mTORC1 also controls the cytoplasmic flow of nutrition into leaves by controlling plasmodesmata, another machine's gating. How could mTORC1 exapted from that function to this? It's unbelievable. Yes, thank you. And that's part of that paper that I was reading. So thank you for sharing that. Exactly. Nice use of logical conclusion to show how absurd evolution is. Hey, Jamie, good to see you. Frank says evolution never happened. Thank you, Frank. I'm glad there's reasonable people like you in the world. And Wes says, all your creation friends are here. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. And now I'm going to add a guest on. And how are you? Abhi? Is that how you say your name?
Hello.
Hi. Welcome.
Am I audible? Yeah.
Yes, you're audible.
So I watched your whole stream. So your problem with mTORC is that it's so complex that it can't evolve gradually over time, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So uh, uh, what is it? Don't you have the same problem with brain, heart, and all other complex mechanisms? How
With what?
can no? I mean, don't you have the same problem with all other complex mechanisms such as heart, brain, and all of that? How can they also
Absolutely.
evolve gradually?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So, in this sequence, when we go to more simpler forms such as bacterium, we also see they have protein kinases, nutrient sensing mechanisms, and all the protein scaffolds. But you can see these are all just basic chemistry which are uh, which are fully functional in their form, uh, but still it can provide survival and you can say reproduction to them. So why can't this this gradually evolve from that basic chemistry?
Well, can you suggest how it could evolve from basic chemistry?
So, according to evolution, it's basically tinkering of what's already present. So in bacterium, we have all the basic chemistry needed for it to form. What we can use various methods such as you can say um, what you can say. Recombination, gene duplication, protein-protein network mechanisms, etc., to slowly modify these structures over the time, like we see in yeast. They also have TOR, but they don't have mTOR. So it's a functional difference between us and them. So it also modified over that time, uh, like in bacterium we have the basic chemistry, like in eukaryotes we have the tor mechanism but not the mtor mechanisms, like in more complex we have tor mechanism, but the regulatory differences are there. So why can't it evolve gradually like this when we can clearly see the pattern? Hello, hello, you are mute.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Did you hear me talking about how many genes are involved in
Yes,
making the
yes.
protein complex?
Yeah.
Okay, so uh, and how large those genes are?
Yes,
Okay,
these are
and
large.
so How do you see those genes coming about?
They were all passed down from the last common universal ancestor which we have. It also had basic chemistry. It was not a very primitive life form, because even the very primitive life form also have the basic chemistry for its to function. So it can get selected from there over the time. Like we can see clear pattern from bacterium to eukaryotes to other multicellular organisms having basic chemistry, then tor mechanism, then mTOR mechanism with different regulatory differences.
Okay, there's so much here, and I just want to start with the phrase you're using about this is just basic chemistry. Okay. And I realize that, even in college textbooks, they will
Yeah.
basically make it sound like life is just basic chemistry, but that is not true.
No, no, but it is made up of chemicals, right?
It is
So it
made up
is.
of chemicals, but okay. So, you know, a car is made up of chemicals, right? A building is made up of chemicals,
Mhm.
but it's not the chemicals that make the car. It's not the chemicals that make the building, right?
But
It's
life
the
is different
arrangement, it's the
because it
particular
has cells.
arrangement.
It
Sorry,
has
go on.
different arrangement of chemicals which form cells, and the cells are capable of replicating and passing their information which a car can't.
Okay, where do you see the information coming from? Because you
From
said
the,
information. So,
yeah,
yeah.
genetic sequences which they have, RNA or DNA sequences, they can replicate and pass on the information, even if it's contains some variation, but still they pass on.
Okay. Now, I realize that you're starting with, basically you're saying we're going from prokaryote to eukaryote here. Okay?
Yeah.
Which is very problematic, but I just want to mention, that these getting that information for that basic prokaryote that you're talking about is not a chemical process. It is a specific arrangement of chemicals in order to do something. Just like, a car is just not chemicals. It's not you don't just get chemicals to make a car by natural processes. It requires an arrangement, right, of chemicals in a particular way. So I'll give you that. Look, the origin of life, there's no explanation for that scientifically. We have tried to get the chemicals to work together to make life. We cannot do that. It doesn't want to make life. But I'm going to give you that prokaryote, that, bacterium that you're talking about. And now we're trying to get the information from that bacterium now to become a eukaryote and get this
Yeah.
mTORC1 protein complex. So where are you getting the information to to get that protein complex?
Are you talking about at the first place where did we get this information from at the origin of life?
I'm I'm pointing out that we need that, okay? That
Yeah.
that's a problem. But
Mhm.
for this conversation, because we're trying to talk about mTORC1, I'm
Yeah.
assuming that you have the information for a prokaryote or, you know, a eukaryotic cell without mTORC1.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm saying is now you've got your eukaryotic cell that doesn't have mTORC1, and you need to get the information to make mTORC1. Where does that information come from?
Okay. So if we go back in earlier times, we have a we have a different environment with different chemicals, nutrients, etc. and in that environment various prokaryotic and eukaryotic life lived, and among that population we had um, um, we can say we had many variations among them. So the variation which performed more better, or we can say responded more better to the environment over time gets selected by the nature. And due to this the allele frequency of the population over time got shifted from more simpler to to a more complex mechanism, which was more responsive to the environment.
Okay, so what then did mTORC start as?
mTORC, I think it mainly started as a nutrient sensing mechanism in its early form. We can say that because we can say the nutrient sensing or uh, cell growth mechanism in its early form, because in its early form these were the main things needed for survival and reproduction of any living organism.
Right, but in its early form, like really it has not changed in, if we're assuming evolution, in many of the organisms it has stayed the same for more than 1 billion years, right? So how did it get there? How did it so like right now you're telling me a story, but there's no mechanism to get there.
So I just showed you that in bacterium we don't find this mechanism. When we come to
Right?
eukaryotes, there's a very primitive uh, functional mechanism of tor, not mTOR. And when we come to multicellular organisms more complex, then we can see mTOR, but with regulatory differences. So here we can see a clear gradual increase of the complexity. Now you talked about that we don't have any mechanism. The 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 mechanism of this itself lies in the genes. Whenever genetic information existing genetic information gets copied, it it always shows errors. And 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 these are the errors, the variations which respond more better to the environments, get get selected over time by the nature. So this is how complexity develop depending upon which variation responds more.
Okay, so then which gene are you saying evolved first
Which gene means in
in
mTOR?
the protein complex? Which gene evolved first? And how was it useful before the other genes to make the other proteins evolved and came together?
I I currently don't know about which gene evolved first, because I haven't uh, deep down into this much. But all I know is this much: with this basic chemistry, we can develop the complex mechanism over time via a clear genetic mechanism. I don't know which specific genes evolved first, and what specific mechanism they played apart from nutrients and sensing and cell growth, or we can say energy balance. But apart from this, I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, and like to be fair, I don't think there is a like gene that evolved first according to the evolutionary scenario. at least, you know, like what we're seeing is that all three of those essential genes had to be present. And then, there's 5 genes in the protein complex in, many organisms. So, but basically,
we
the
are
point I'm
we are
trying to
basically
make with that is
assuming that
that
we
you
have the
don't
basic
have
chemistry,
time.
right?
Sorry, what?
We are basically assuming that we have all the basic chemistry first, so that evolution can take place, right, at the beginning.
Well, I don't think evolution can take place. So, no, I'm not assuming that. I don't, because I'm not making the same assumption that you are, that this is just basic chemistry.
Oh, then how do we explain the clear change in the uh, uh, we can say fossil records, genetic similarities, and all the genes which we share? How will we explain those, and the artificial selection mechanism from which we created so many different breeds of dogs, from wolves to chihuahuas and all of that? How will we explain that? Because we have a clear
Yeah,
mechanism there.
Abhi, thank you for asking, and I'll tell you how I explain it.
Yeah, thank you,
I
thank you.
explain it that God created. God created you, God created all, creatures. So God created life, and there are some similarities. He gave us similarities. So I don't see the similarities as evidence of an evolutionary process. And with the fossil
but
record,
then
what we see in the
but then
fossil record, go ahead.
but then in the artificial selection mechanism, um, um, we created all these breeds. So how did we
Yeah.
created them? Yeah, them if we don't have a mechanism,
Okay.
because we
Now,
use the same mechanism which we are describing here.
yes. And I'm not opposing the idea of selection, and definitely not opposing artificial selection, because
Mm.
what you're talking about is intelligent agents that are trying to direct dog breeds in a certain way, right? So that's human involvement with getting the dog breeds to go in a certain direction genetically.
But the uh, but the only thing difference is that except from nature, we are using humans. Rest all the genetic mechanisms, the coping mechanism, uh, variation mechanism, all are same. We are not changing that. All we are changing is sorry, all we are affecting is the desired trait which we want, like the nature selects. So in the same way we are also selecting that, like you will be familiar with adaptations.
Yeah,
It also
and
happens like that only.
And so I agree with the idea of natural selection, in that, like, an organism that has a debilitating disease is going to be less likely to survive and reproduce. And so, that is not going to be selected, right, by nature. It's more likely that an organism that is, right, like fit in some
Yeah.
way, able to reproduce, is going to survive. So I'm not disagreeing with that idea, right?
Mm.
But what I'm saying is, so nature can only select from what is already there, right?
So so the basic chemistry was already there from the primitive times. We had cells, we had primitive
Right.
cells, so the basic chemistry was already there to select from. So
Right.
why
But,
can't the nature select from there?
well, so you're saying basic chemistry, right? And again, that's a problem because life is not basic chemistry. Even the
No.
simplest.
According to
even-
us,
Okay.
so I am uh, comparing that from us, uh, that what what we are more complex than that. So I'm
Yes.
comparing from that.
And so what I'm saying is that nature can't select mTORC1, okay? Because like you have I mean it can select it once it exists, but it can't be involved in the process of developing mTORC1. And so what we're talking about is a complex
But then,
molecular machine
but
that
then,
has to have all these
this
parts
goes
in
to
place.
abiogenesis.
Okay, what about abiogenesis?
No, you said uh, nature can't develop the basic chemistry at first. So this field is not of evolution; it is of abiogenesis. Says how did the first life formed with all the basic chemistries to select from. So here we are talking about evolution, and
Yes.
so so
And I'm
uh,
talking about that. I'm giving you the cell that you need. Okay. I'm giving you the organism. I'm giving you even a, simple eukaryotic organism that doesn't have mTORC1. And I'm saying, how can nature select a machine that doesn't work yet? How can it select a gene that doesn't work yet? How can it select 5 genes? 3, okay, I'll stick with 3
bacterium
because there's
also
3
does not have this,
essential.
but it works.
What's that?
Bacterium also does not have this complex mechanism which we have, but it still works for their biology. So
Right,
so
and so
so
where do
so
you
from
see
that
it
it can select.
entering? Mhm.
So from that it can select over the time the variations which have which responds more towards the towards the nutrient sensing, cell growth, etc. survive and uh, what we can say, survive and reproduce more. So ultimately they will pass their genes more, and ultimately we will get the complex mechanism.
Okay, well, if it's okay with you, I wanna bring up a comment to help out because I feel like we're stuck because 'cause we're kinda going around in circles. So let me
Yeah.
bring up a comment from Mehrshad. He says, "Intermediates of mTORC1 core system can't be simplified. If you do that, it loses its function completely. So evolution can't gradually improve that." Does
But
that
that's true
help you
for
understand what I'm
for
talking
mammals.
about? Like, it can't sorry, I'll let you respond. Go ahead.
but um, but this is true for mammals, because if you remove this mechanism from mammals, yeah, it will be fatal for them. But if you remove this mechanism from a eukaryote, it won't be fatal for them, because they don't have mTOR, they have TOR mechanism. If you remove the TOR mechanism from a bacterium, it won't be fatal for them, because they don't have the TOR mechanisms also.
Right. And so, like, how do you see a, a machine that's not functional
No, no,
and
no,
not
no. All these
integrated?
steps are functional.
Okay.
That that even in bacterium, protein kinases, protein scaffolds, all are functional. But these are functional for its biology, not ours. So if you remove this from them, yeah, it would be fatal for them, but not for us. So this is what I'm saying.
Okay. So I'm let me put up a comment from Wes. He
Okay.
says you can't explain the most basic cells via natural processes, but really what you can explain Wait, but really, what can you explain that way? Not much, it seems.
Again, again, this question, most basic cell goes to the goes to the field of abiogenesis. It has nothing to do with evolution, because evolution started after we got the basic cells, not
Right,
before that.
but and we're not talking about that, okay? We're having the basic cell, and we're
Yeah.
trying to figure out how does that basic cell learn? How does it know how to build a very complex machine and integrate it into its process to become a different sort of cell?
So it does not know like us, like we think. eh, and and it has nothing to do with it. It has to just respond better to its environment. Those variations which will respond better eventually will get selected by the nature, because they will reproduce and pass on their genes more. So ultimately the modification from the recombination gene duplication uh, will arrange the variations, and among those variations which will perform better, which will be get selected by the nature. This is the simple mechanism.
Yes, well, I think we just have a fundamental disagreement about what can be accomplished. So I
Yeah, I
don't,
also think so.
when I look at this complex molecular machine, I don't
Mm.
see a pathway for it to evolve because there's
so
so much
so
information needed. There's 5 separate genes needed, right? And
mm,
these genes have a lot of information in them. This isn't just like, you know, like, so the information in those genes, it is able to produce this perfectly formatted machine that is able to direct and regulate a bunch of other machines.
but can't we say the same thing for for even more complex things from life, such as galaxies, nebulas, etc. They are they are they are even more complex, but we have seen them forming forming gradually via natural processes.
Well, uh, I would dispute that they are as complex as life and the processes that we
Galaxy
see
is
in
not.
life. But I also believe that those galaxies were formed by a creator.
You mean they were formed by the creator in the by intervening.
Yes.
So why don't we see this with telescopes? We should be able to see that a creator making all these galaxies, but we
Well,
don't see that.
when do you see galaxies forming?
um, we see that billions of years ago, from early Big Bang to all of this 2.5 million years ago, and and
Well,
from that
actually,
day.
you know what's interesting? I don't know if you've been following the discoveries that we've made with the JWST telescope, which is
Mm.
now seeing out further than we've seen before. And it's seeing out into areas where our models of the universe, nothing is supposed to be there. There's not supposed to be stars or galaxies in the areas
Mm.
that we're seeing now with the telescope. But when we look out there, we are seeing fully formed galaxies
After Big
close
Bang,
to the
or before Big
yeah,
Bang?
sorry, go ahead.
After, no, 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 you said we see fully formed galaxy. So I am asking, do we see that before CMB or after CMB?
Well, CMB is, just this radiation that we're seeing, and it's
Yeah,
supposed to be from, I mean, according to the Big Bang model, it is basically at the edge, basically the farthest thing out. It's
farthest we
coming
can
from
see.
the
Yeah,
edge. What's that?
farthest we can see. Yeah, that was.
Yeah. But, they're the CMB, it's not necessarily what they think it is.
So what is it according to you?
Well, I don't know. I don't think it's a Big Bang remnant.
So don't you think God created this universe,
Yes.
then separated heavens and earth?
Well, I believe what the Bible says. It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So
So does not this align with Big Bang model?
it can.
So still you are not accepting it. So what's the
I
problem?
don't accept the Big Bang on a scientific basis because the Big Bang has many problems, and it's on its last leg. It's, it just barely holding on. So no, I don't accept the Big Bang.
No. So this is all I had to say.
Okay, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your willingness to come on and talk with me about this.
By the way, I am not a professional or something like that. I am just a student, just now enrolled in MBBS course. So I saw this and came to discuss. Yes.
Awesome. Wow. Well, that's really brave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for the conversation.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Well, that was fun. I'm so glad I had somebody join. Thank you guys for hanging out. If anybody else wants to join, I'll keep it open for a few minutes. And while I am waiting, I will review 6 reasons to reject evolution, 6 scientific reasons. The proposed mechanisms for evolution are grossly insufficient for producing the diversity of life that we see today. One of those proposed mechanisms, so most of the mechanisms are just moving stuff around. And, you know, there's only one mechanism that could possibly bring about new information, and that is mutations. And what we've seen of mutations is that mutations are also grossly insufficient, right? Those are supposed to be the information maker, but like what we saw with mTORC1 today is that like you'd need hundreds of thousands of bits of information that work together perfectly harmoniously to make these machines. You need something more. You need the intention. You need a mind involved in this. Okay. So mutations are not going to cut it. They're not going to build a fantastic, complex molecular machine. So, and in fact, mutations are actually problematic. We have seen that mutations degrade organisms. Yes, occasionally you can get a mutation that'll benefit an organism, but the overall trajectory is seriously downhill. We are seeing this in not just humans, but in other organisms, that mutations are causing us a big problem. We have more and more genetic diseases that are happening. And so, yeah, mutations working in the wrong direction. Number 3 reason to reject evolution: integrated systems require foresight. You know, you have to know what needs to be done in order to get these systems to work together. You have to plan. mTORC1 can't just, if it was able to magically appear, how does it get integrated with all of these other systems? And there's a problem with getting it to appear because there's no mind involved to figure out what's needed to know that there's a mechanism that, that hey, wouldn't it be great if we had this little machine that would be able to sense and direct and things like that. Well, there's no mind in evolution to be able to do that. So that, that is what is needed for what we see in life. You need a mind, you need intelligence to think out what is required for an organism to live. Then number 4, the fourth reason to reject evolution is numerous chicken and egg problems at the cell and system level. Look, down to the simplest cell, there's so many things in the cell that you have to have in place simultaneously. You do not have millions of years to get one part to evolve and then millions of years to get another part to evolve. They all have to be together at the same time in order for the organism to live and survive. And that's true just with a basic cell. And then what happens when you get a complex like system at the system level where, like a human being that has trillions of cells that are working together in harmony as part of a larger system. So with so many systems that are in place working together. So what good is your circulatory system if it's not attached and working with your brain? What good is your digestive system if it's not attached and working to your circulatory system? Don't have millions of years to evolve these things separately. All of these things have to be in place, and people will try to push it back and say, well, life used to be a lot simpler. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. Right now, you can look at earthworms that are supposed to have been around for hundreds of millions of years, and they have the same complex integrated systems. As simple as they look, they're actually quite complex. So, and we saw today that this molecular machine, mTORC1, is actually a very complex system that was there from the beginning of eukaryotes. I mean, it's there in the last common ancestor. So, and there's chicken and egg problems just with that molecular machine. Okay, so those are the big problems. Then we have 2 other problems that are good scientific reasons to reject evolution. One is the fossil record sudden appearance of forms. We do not see the slow development of forms in the fossil record. We see sudden appearance of forms. You have forms suddenly appear in the Precambrian. You have forms suddenly appear in the Cambrian. You have forms suddenly appear in every level. You have sudden appearance of wings, sudden appearance of seeds, sudden appearance of angiosperms, sudden appearance of bats, sudden appearance of all kinds of things. So there's no slow development as they would like you to believe or as you have been presented. Okay, this is if evolution were true, we should see many more transitional forms. We should see, what the wing was before it became a wing. And I'm talking about, we've got insect wings, bat wings, mammal wings, reptile wings. You've got so many different types of wings, bird wings, and these all suddenly appear in the fossil record. So why aren't we seeing thousands of buildups to those wings? Why do they appear perfectly formed? All right. The final one is the phylogenetic trees are a mess. So life is supposed to have evolved from a common ancestor and go out to this beautiful spreading tree. And we've grouped all these animals according to their genetic and morphologic similarities. Problem is, the tree is a mess. At every branch, you have contradictions. You have, wait a minute, this thing evolved this feature, and then another animal on another branch evolved a similar feature, but they're like way spread apart from each other. And there's things in the middle that don't have that feature. And you have so many contradictions in that tree. And evolutionists have tried to patch that over by making up words like parallel evolution, convergent evolution, incomplete lineage sorting. And they try to make it seem like all is okay. But the truth is, the tree does not go neatly from a common ancestor. It's a mess, and it is full of contradictions. So those are my scientific reasons for rejecting evolution. And I have an agenda. I will tell you what my agenda is. My agenda is I want you to know the truth about reality. The truth about reality is that evolution is false. You have been told something false. You've been, so many educated people, smart, educated people have been taught a false view of reality. You have been convinced that things can happen by natural processes that cannot happen by natural processes. This is not about what we don't know. It's about what we do know. We do know that this type of information and machinery that is throughout all of life, down to the simplest organism, there's no mechanism to bring that about. Not only is there no mechanism, we know what mechanism brings about those kind of things. We know that intelligent beings build systems. We know that intelligent beings write codes like the DNA code. We know that intelligent beings are able to do all of these things. And I'm getting distracted because Otangelo is joining. Hey, Otangelo. Let me get this off the screen. Good to see you.
Yeah, hi, Rebecca. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, good topic. Very interesting.
Thank you. Have you studied this machine before?
Yes, I did. This is actually one of the most complex proteins, and it has many different essential regulatory functions. And it receives signals from the environment and processes these signals. And then, depending on the information received, it will give different kinds of signals to the machinery, which then makes the gene regulation. That is, there are different protein species which can be used by the organism to adapt to the environment. And let's say that it is very cold and it needs a kind of protein species which is adapted to the cold weather. And that protein says to the machinery, well, transcribe and translate that section of the DNA, which then will produce that kind of protein which will be positive for the organism to adapt to the environment. So adaptation is basically something which has to be inbuilt in all organisms in order to survive. And this, of course, is a big problem for those which propose evolution, because they have to explain, well, right at the beginning when life started, how was this regulation instantiated? And if it wasn't there, there would be no survival even of the most simple unicellular organisms.
Yes. Thank you. And you know what? I was actually, I forgot to share the rest of my agenda when I was talking earlier, because this is the important part. And I know you think it's the important part too. The reason that we want people to know the truth about evolution, that evolution is false, is because we want you to know the truth, the real truth about reality, which is God created you and God loves you. That is my agenda. That's why I spend all the time doing this, because I want people to know that God is real and God loves you. And a lot of people are thinking God isn't real because they've been convinced that, hey, evolution did it all. We're just a product of natural processes.
I think this is a great thing for you to bring up together with refuting evolution, Rebecca, because I mean, it is justified and warranted when we talk about intelligent design, just to keep it scientifically and not pointing to the identity of the creator. But I think in certain venues, like on your channel and other YouTube channels, it would be very appropriated to talk about both things, not only about the evidence which points to the necessity of an intelligent designer which creates all things, but who actually that creator is, and namely that it is Jesus Christ, the Trinity, the triune God, which has revealed himself in the Bible. So it is very important that people know who we believe in.
Yes, I agree. And I think it is a different question to answer. I think just from the science, if you are just a good, make good observations about the world through science, you can come to the conclusion that yes, there is an intelligent designer. Now, figuring out who that designer is, or is it multiple designers, that takes something different, So, I've come to the conclusion that, like Otangelo said, Jesus Christ is the creator. This is the God that is revealed in the Bible. But I don't think you can get there scientifically. Now, it's not that there's no evidence for the Bible being a revelation of, God, but I don't think it's necessarily scientific evidence.
Well, I mean, there are different lines. I mean, I would disagree with you on that. I think there are ways by science to come specifically to Christ. But I mean, that would be a separate topic. And I know that it's not your focus, so I will not go into that, right?
Okay.
But yeah, but I mean, I think that there are so many powerful reasons how we can come to infer the God of the Bible. That is history, archaeology, comparative
Yes.
investigations, and undesigned coincidences. So many venues. If someone starts actually to study all these things, can come to the conclusion that God, which revealed himself in the Bible and specifically in the New Testament, is the true creator.
Yes, actually, I don't disagree with that actually. And people are pushing back on me. Junior is saying it is science, historical science. Yes, exactly. Agree with Otangelo. Yes, and I don't mean to say that, there's no scientific evidence for the God of the Bible, being the true God. I'm just saying it. I don't think you can get, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'll leave that one. We can talk about that another time. But so I have to say, hello to my friend Mary. Hi, Mary. So glad to see you. And then let's respond to Big Bag Mama's comment, because Big Bag Mama says there was no distinct line between non-life and life. Complex organic molecules found in nature, self-replicated like minerals. Not a great mystery. Big Bad Mama, you know just how to get Otangelo started, don't you? Otangelo, I know you got to respond to this one. Go ahead.
Well, when we start to talk about self-replication and DNA and that kind of stuff, then we hear it very often by the atheist camp. They start to make comparisons to minerals and to snowflakes and things like that. And I mean, Rebecca knows very well, and so do I. And actually, anyone knows this, that DNA stores not just any kind of information, but it is specified, complex, instructional information. And we know that only intelligence is capable of creating information which then can be used to make complex machines which have a specific purpose. And based on that, we can make actually a scientific hypothesis which is falsifiable on intelligent design, which is intelligent design claims that instructional, complex, specified information comes only from a mind. And that can be falsified by anyone that disagrees with that by showing that unguided random natural processes are capable and have the power as well as intelligence to create that kind of information. And once someone does that, then the hypothesis of intelligent design, which actually I would say is not only a hypothesis, but actually a theory of intelligent design, is falsified. Why a theory? Because we have, by repeated experience, demonstrated and shown that intelligence is a capable mechanism while non-intelligent mechanisms are not.
Thank you. And yes, I want to add to that Big Bad Mama, there is unfortunately a lot of misinformation out there. And I do challenge you on this. And I understand when you try to Google this and find out, you'll like see like explanations like, oh, life is just came about by a chemical process. But the truth is that no, chemicals do not want to form together to make life. Okay. On a chemical level, you can't get it. And that's in addition to what Otangelo is saying about the specified complex information required. The only source of specified complex information that we know of is intelligence. And so, no, complex organic molecules do not form together and make life. It is a great mystery, actually. It is a great mystery for science. There is currently no explanation for the origin of life. If you disagree, I'd love to have you come on here because I know the science is with me. There is no one can produce any evidence that life can come about from a chemical process. Everything that has been tried and attempts have been made have failed completely. So we're no closer to making life than we were when Stanley Miller did the experiment in the 1950s. And it's really funny that like after all the billions of dollars that have been spent on origin of life research, or I don't know if it's billions, millions, I don't know, but like that Stanley Miller experiment is still the one we're putting in the textbooks. Why? If these experiments are just showing so much that, hey, we're getting closer and closer, why aren't those experiments in the textbooks?
Absolutely agree, Rebecca. And on top of that, I would say that scientific advance, rather than showing that natural unguided processes can produce the basic building blocks of life, it has just demonstrated the opposite, namely that random molecules left on their own, they disintegrate and become asphalt. That is what actually scientific experiments have been showing repeatedly. And I mean, anyone can, for example, search Steve Banner, a very famous abiogenesis researcher, paradoxes in the origin of life. And he says exactly this, that molecules, they go their natural way by disintegrating. That's exactly the opposite of what is actually necessary. And when an atheist or an unbeliever or a naturalist says, well, it's just chemicals, it is interesting that Paul Davies, which is actually not a supporter of intelligent design and creationism, he made a very succinct and short description of what life is. He said, life is chemicals plus information. So information is an absolutely essential ingredient in any biological system and in life. So if someone wants to come up with any kind of explanation for the origin of life, the origin of information has to be explained in as much as the basic building blocks, which is also a huge enigma and mystery.
Yes. Okay, this is just for fun. Iron Charioteer says Christianity has a chicken and atom problem. Okay, well, I guess we're always saying that evolution has numerous chicken and egg problems, which is true. So I like your joke. Thank you. And so Yeah. Wes says it's not just that we don't know how life could arise naturally. It's more than that. Even the chemical, Otangelo said chemicals plus information, but let's get real about the chemicals. Like, we've tried to make the chemicals, we've tried to get the chemicals for life to come together. It's not working. So even on the chemical basis, it's not working.
You know what the big problem is, Rebecca, is that the macromolecules which make up life, which are phospholipids, amino acids, nucleotides, and carbohydrates, these are all complex macromolecules, and they are made by living cells through very complex metabolic pathways and proteins. And there is one of the chicken and egg problems. You need the cellular machinery to make the building blocks of life, but you need the building blocks of life to make the machinery which drives life. So the question is, what came first? And I mean, all these origin of life experiments, they have the beautiful task to explain how these macromolecules could have arisen without that cellular machinery which wasn't there on the prebiotic earth. So they are just stuck with natural processes like lightning and other eventual possible hypotheses like the hydrothermal vents, which eventually made the energy and so forth. But all these alternatives, they have all led to dead ends. And the big problem is that you need selection to select these building blocks, which are also specified and complex. And there was no natural selector there. You cannot use natural selection in the origin of life. So if you had hundreds of different amino acids and just a bunch of 20 is actually used in life, how do you get them separated? How do you get them concentrated? How do you select only left or right-handed molecules? I mean, these are all unanswered questions. And in my trilogy of the origin of life, X-ray of life, I list close to 2,000 unsolved problems. And the list is growing.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Otangelo. And so I think we've exhausted it tonight. I appreciate everybody watching. And let's just put up a little reminder about the problems with evolving mTORC1. Okay. Remember, this is a complex molecular machine. It's a protein complex. It's made of 10 different proteins that have to be arranged just right. And this is a cells manager. It directs the processes of the cells. If you're going to, build proteins, this little machine has to say, it's time to build proteins. If it's time to stop building proteins, it has to say it's time to stop building proteins. And it directs about 100 different proteins. So, which are little machines. So why is this a problem for evolution? You're saying a mindless process produced a machine that manages cellular processes. Where did it get the knowledge? Where did it get programmed to know how to do that? Who programmed it? There is a who involved. Okay, so you cannot get this by mutations. Mutations don't care. They don't want to manage. Mutations have no desire to make a machine to manage. And nature can only select from what's already there. So if you don't have a process to get there, nature can't select it. And you don't have a process to get there because mutations don't care about building a machine, and they don't have the ability. They don't have so they would need to evolve 5 de novo genes that are 500,000 base pairs of information. So, this is a lot of information to get to come together. Then it has to have the correct binding structures and the ability to bind together. These things are made separately. These proteins that come together are made separately. Okay, so they have to, this is dispersed genetic information on various chromosomes. And yet, how did it know that it needed to build and come together? Oh, wow, we have even somebody else joining. Oh, wow, okay. Well, good. Let me I'll say goodnight to Otangelo. I was going to close it down, but it looks like we might have somebody coming on to challenge. But Otangelo, I'm going to say goodnight to you and thank you very much. And I'll let this other person come on and share. So
Sure. Have a good one. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Thanks for all your hard work in this area.
Yeah, and have a happy new year. And might the Lord mightiful use you next year to be light in a world which dwells in darkness.
Thank you so much. You too. And
Yeah.
yes, may your work be blessed. Thank you. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Hello.
Hello,
How are you,
Rebecca.
Kathy? Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. I'm Simon. Yeah, good.
Oh, Simon.
I'm
Oh,
yes.
wait a minute. Are you Simos Funk? No, never mind.
No.
Okay, you're somebody else. Simon. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
I'm calling you from Tasmania.
Oh, nice. Wow. What time is it there?
What's 12:40 in the afternoon? Beautiful day.
Cool.
Summertime, mid of summer.
Wonderful. I'm jealous.
Yeah. Yeah. What was I going to ask you? I've seen both you and Otangelo previously on the Pine Creek channel, just incidentally.
Oh, wow. And that was like years ago. Cool.
Yeah, that was a fair while ago. I see your videos come up time and time again. Okay, I got a question for you. Let's say that next week the scientists say, all right, we've done it. We've turned all the amino acids and stuff we've found occurring in nature and we're going to make living material. Okay, let's say they claim that and they can demonstrate how they do it and they've actually achieved it. What would be your response at that point? Would you say, see, it has to be intelligently designed, or nature can do it on its own?
Well, it's only taken how many years with how many minds working together to
I'm just asking.
Right? So,
well,
yeah,
we haven't reached the pinnacle of science yet, obviously. So we're still working on it. But let's say it happened, right? Let's say they actually managed to do it, and they created living material from all the stuff that they found in nature, and however they did it, they've managed to do it, and they can explain how they did it, and they can demonstrate how they did it. What would be your response? Would you say, see, it has to be intelligently designed because these people, have to do the work? It can occur in nature, and it's not intelligently designed.
Well, I would say that unless they did it via replicating a process that would not involve them directly, meaning you know what I mean? Like if they were able to recreate a scenario where it happened on its own.
Well, that's what the experiment would show, yes, and they have confirmed that, and this is the method by which it happens, and here we can demonstrate how it happens. What would be your response? That's the thing I'm interested in. Would you say, see, it is intelligently designed because these intelligent people had to combine all this stuff in an experiment that's taken 100 years or however long, and they finally cracked it? What would you say, see, it's intelligently designed, or would you say it can occur in nature and this is the demonstration of how it does?
I would say,
what would be your response?
Like I said, if they were able to show that this is how it basically if it could be shown, if they were reproducing just the environment or something like that, then I would say, oh wow, it can happen by natural processes. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's my only question. So if all that could be demonstrated, you would say, sure, natural processes can do it and no God required. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Keep your eyes on the science. I reckon that in the next 10 years, probably in the next
Okay.
10 years, I'll probably be able to do it. Yeah.
Well, but now, Simon, let me pose it in the same way to you, though. Like, what would it take for
Yep.
you to realize, like, right now, are you being scientific about it? Because right now, we don't, like, we can say, like, life as, like, in all of our scientific experiments, we cannot make life come about by natural processes. So right now is your position,
Sure.
life does not come about by natural processes?
No. Okay. So my position is I don't know how life came about, but all we see when we investigate nature is natural processes. We don't see evidence of anything else going on. So I don't know.
When does the life itself get to become the evidence that there is something more going on?
What do you mean?
Well, what I mean is, like,
That's
there's things.
that's begging the question, because if all you're seeing is the natural stuff happen, and you're not seeing anything else, going on, and you work out how the life comes about naturally, and you know until we know, we don't know. So we say we don't know, but we're still looking. That's my position.
Okay,
We don't know, but we're still
but
looking.
is there any way that we could get to knowing that it doesn't come about by natural processes? Because I think
Knowing
we're
that
already
it
here,
doesn't.
and I can go into that, but I want to hear from you. Is there anything that could show you that it couldn't come about by natural processes?
Needs to be demonstrated as much as that it does come about by natural processes. Both of those positions would need to be demonstrated in some way. So at the moment, there's a question mark, and we can't demonstrate that it's not, and we can't demonstrate that it is. So we're staying at that question mark until we can come up with some way to determine, is it or is it not?
Okay, well, let me ask you this. If I was using a computer and, full of computer code, I'm running this computer code, and I said my computer code came about by natural processes, would you
So
believe?
that's a false analogy, because computer code is something that we've done, and it's an artificial thing produced. It's not a natural process. All right. So information can be as simple as H2O. That's water. Like, it's only the labels that we give it to describe what's going on. So information is basically us describing what is happening in a code that we can understand to make sense of it. We're artificially applying the code to the natural thing for us to be able to study it as much as anything and understand it.
Okay, well, so are you saying that information in our genetic code it's not real information?
Okay, so it's chains of chemicals. That's what we know that
Right.
DNA is, right? Chains of chemicals. The way that we describe the chain is we apply a code to it for us to be able to understand what the chain looks like and be able to study it. All right.
No.
So we're looking at this chemical chain, and we're going through and we're saying, oh, this is the sequence, and these are the elements involved, and there we go. And this is how we're gonna record how that is arranged. It says nothing about anything else. The code is what we give it to explain how it's arranged.
Okay, that is not true. Okay, and I'll
What do you
tell
mean?
you how. I'll tell you how. It doesn't matter, okay, what we assign to that information, okay? Because a code is no good without a code reader, and we are not the code readers. Now, we came in later and figured out what some of this does, But
See,
so the
you're a
information,
false.
hold on,
you're
wait.
Okay,
I must insist on making this point. I must insist on making this
sure.
point.
Okay, make your point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is, that the information that's in the DNA code, it is specified to make protein machines in our bodies. And it has to be read. That code has to be read. So not only is it a specified code, there are code reading machines. The ribosome is a code reading machine.
Yeah.
It reads and it uses the information in that code to build a protein machine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. So what we see is all these natural things doing natural processes. Okay, and we're using language like code to describe what's going on. Okay. My question is, it's what's the alternate explanation? How does it happen the other way? You're trying to undermine what we kind of all know quite well about biology and about natural processes. But what's your conclusion? We don't know something in science, therefore what? What's the conclusion?
Well, the conclusion is that there is a designer of life. There's an intelligence. And we know that because
We don't know, therefore God.
No, we do know that the only source of specified complex information is intelligence. Therefore, we know there is an intelligence behind life.
I'm saying you're using extremely loaded language to describe something that's naturally occurring. Because we can investigate it in nature. We see what's going on. You're loading the language with I know the routine, but it's fairly loaded language. You must admit.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've got distracted slightly because there's two people backstage that want to come on and argue with you. But guys, you're going to have to trust that I can handle this. And I think I'm handling it just fine,
I would rather just have a nice chat to Rebecca because I kind of know her shtick.
Okay, sorry, you broke up a little bit, but I will let you guys on after me and Simon are done talking.
Yeah,
so
I won't stay long.
Okay,
I won't stay long.
But sorry, the thing that this is the thing. You have right now a library of information in each one of your cells, and what you want me to say, like,
so, okay, stop. That is loaded language. Okay, what we have are chemical chains called DNA,
yes.
which are the chemical chains of molecules we call DNA that orchestrate life. All right, that use that language.
Yeah, we have a chemical
that's what
chain.
we know.
And just like we can encode language in a variety of ways. Okay.
Do you know anything about
wait, hold on. You keep interrupting me. Hold on. You keep interrupting me. So, just like we can encode language and information in various forms, like beeps, Morse code, we basically take our language, we take information and we conduct it through beeps, right? And that is what is happening with those chemicals in the DNA, is that information is coded in there. It is absolutely a code. It cannot.
It's a false equivalency, Rebecca.
No,
you're comparing two things that aren't alike, because one we know is intentional and the other we don't know. All we see is non-intentional.
Wait, why are you saying it's non-intentional? Where are you getting that idea?
Where do we see the intention? Because everything we just observe is but where's the intention in hydrogen and oxygen coming together to make water? Where's the intention in that? It's a chemical reaction. It's a bond. It's just a natural process.
Right. And we're not talking about hydrogen and oxygen.
Well, we're talking about elements combining. And where's the intention in that combination of things? We don't see intention. We just see reaction. There's no intention in reaction. That's just the way that the universe is.
Okay, so are you saying okay, and let's just take it away from DNA because I feel like it's too abstract.
Yeah.
Are you saying there's no intention in your eyes, in your nose, in your hand? There's no intention there for you to be able
this is the
to
way.
see.
No, this is the way that we've evolved. We've grown as organic creatures to be what we are.
Wait, that's begging the question. I'm asking you about what are you saying? You're assuming that we evolved. I'm saying,
No.
was there an intent? Like,
Well, that's a demonstrated fact of reality. I'm sorry, Rebecca.
But what's in question is how did that reality come to be?
What
right?
reality?
The reality of your eyes, your nose, your
Not
digestive
eyes,
system, your hand.
They're a process of a very, very long chain of events called evolution.
That is you're assuming that. Okay.
Well, that's the explanation.
What I'm saying is that what we're questioning is how we got here, right? And you're saying all we see is natural processes, no intention. And I'm saying, so you're telling me there's no intention involved in your eyes, your nose, your digestive system, your hands.
No, it's no intention there. It's just the way we are, because that's the way we've evolved. Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
Where's the intention in childhood brain cancer?
Now, this gets into the real reason. This gets into the real reason that people like evolution.
No?
Okay?
Tell me where the intention is in that.
Because you don't want to accept the reality as it is, that brain cancer exists. You want to get God off the hook or get him out of the picture because
I'm asking you a question to put that back on you. If you say there's intention in our life, or intention in my nose and hands and feet and my eyes, where's the intention in stuff that's horrid for kids?
Well,
if you can't all of a sudden say everything has intention. No, but no, this doesn't have intention. That's a very you're trying to play both sides of the coin there.
No, I'm not, because what I would say is, brain cancer is a system gone wrong, right?
Yep.
So you have a great functioning system and then something goes wrong. So like,
but surely going wrong is also intentional.
Yeah. If my car breaks down, does that mean there was no car designer just because I have a broken car now?
No, it means the designer was not perfect.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Can you live with that?
What's that?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's your filter that your conclusion is the designer's not perfect. Okay.
Well, you're saying, okay, you made an analogy about a car.
Yeah.
And I said the reason it's failed is because the designer wasn't perfect.
Okay. Now, if it is the truth that the designer wasn't perfect, can you live with that? Or do you have to make the designer go away completely?
Well, it's not my thing. I'm not religious. But for you guys, that's a problem.
Actually, you seem quite religious. Because you're willing
In what way?
Because you're willing to put your faith in what you've been told. You've been faith in what you've been told about us coming about by now. This is a worldview. It's a system of thinking. It's a philosophy.
I've learned a lot in my life, Rebecca. I have a lot of education. That's not faith. That's me learning things about the natural world, and I would change my mind in a moment. In a moment, should I be given sufficient evidence to warrant believing in whatever, including gods and stuff. But I don't see it. And then when you make analogies like, you know, the designer designing the car, and then the kid with brain cancer, they're kind of like, well, is your designer perfect? Is he good? No. Is he perfect? No. Is he all-knowing? No. So your God goes away.
Well, you know, I tend to be very grateful for reality as God created it. Even with all of the bad things that happen, I still think it's a worthy reality, and I'm glad that God created it. So that's where I stand. Mhm.
But you're starting with your conclusion, really, aren't you? That God created it in the first place.
Well, okay, and oh no, Matt left. I'm sorry, Matt. Come back,
All right.
please.
Hey, Rebecca, I'll go. I'll let someone else in. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. All right, take care. All right, bye-bye, Simon. Okay, Matt, I hope you come back and I will let you on. I'll try to let you on right away. Hey, Junior.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly address what the previous gentleman said. We are discovering more. I'll stay scientific, and I'll tie this to the supposed problem of evil. But I'll start with science, and then I'll tie this to the problem of evil. I'll do this quickly. I don't want to take too much because I know it's been gonna. Anyway, the more we learn about genetics, the more we are finding, epigenetics and how certain genes turns itself on and off depending on the situation. It's full of purpose, It's really incredible. Now, I'm gonna tie this to the theological problem that they keep talking about. Basically, if we have all this function in our DNA, and we know the DNA, it's information storage system. It is. Atheists don't like to admit it, but it basically is. And they can't explain where the information comes from, and they keep in this loop. Chemistry, like we've seen today, chemistry can do. You know what I mean? Trying to assign a mind to chemistry when you can't run away from this. It's purpose. We find purpose, and that's the end of that. Now, why did God, in my view, okay, I know people can disagree, but why did God, in my view, create it like this in such a way that you have a specific epigenetics in you, certain genes in you that can be changed over time, and you have a child? That epigenetics and that information can go to your child. Why did God create it like this? Well, because God wants you to love your son, to make it's made in your image. I think when the Bible talks about things being made in your image, I think there's actually a genetic implication there, because your son is so similar to you in the genetics that it makes you love your son, your daughter even more because it's made after your image. The Bible doesn't just say that God created Adam in his image. It actually says that Seth, Adam's son, was created in Adam's image. The Bible also says that. So the image started perfectly, Adam being made in God's image. The image started perfectly, and that's why Adam was without sin in the beginning. But the image making, if you know what I mean, the image making doesn't stop there. Seth was made in Adam's image, and so on and so forth until today. But this process of image making after the fall of man keeps breaking the genome. And this breaking keeps being passed on to the generations. And now it's really kind of broken. Do you know what I mean? So if you have a father that is really angry, guess what? You now just have a gene in you that makes you angry sometimes, because you store that information inside you, and now your son has a chance of being born angry as well because it has similar genes in you. That's why things are broken. That's why you have a lot of evil happening, because the image started perfectly, Adam being made in God's image, but the image was starting to get broken because the genome started to get broken and broken and broken. Why did God create like this, that we inherit this thing? And that actually makes sense when the Bible says that we come from sin, because that actually seems to have genetic implications as well when the Bible says we come from sin. Why did God create like this? That people inherit the genes of the other? Because God wants us to love our children, because it's actually a perfect system, because you know your children is made after your image. It has similar genes as you, you know. However, this system has consequences, doesn't it? Because if you do bad stuff and you're really angry all the time, guess what? Your child has a chance of also being angry all the time. So this amazing system also has a consequence. But if you know how to live your life well and loving each other, guess what? Your child has a chance of also being like this. And now you're going to have this amazing relationship with your child. Both of you having similar genes, both of you loving each other. It's a perfect system that has consequences. It's all it is. And that's my answer to the supposed problem of evil. That's all I wanted to say.
Awesome. Thank you, Junior. I appreciate it. And I wanted to say, Matt, I'm so sorry I didn't get you on. I've really been wanting to talk to you. So thank you for coming on. And I still want you to come back if you want to come back. But Matt says confidence literally means with faith or trust. And yes, and I think that those who trust in the Lord they will not be put to shame. And I have found that God is trustworthy. So I don't have all of the answers for why bad things happen, but I love what God has done in humanity and in the world. And so I trust him. Yeah. Thank you so much, Junior. And thank you everybody for watching. And I guess Matt's not going to come back. So anyway, thanks everybody for just your support of this channel. I appreciate those who are willing to, who don't believe in evolution, but who do believe in evolution, but are willing to pay attention and listen to what is being said against your worldview. And I really appreciate all those who chat and comment on my channel who, know that evolution is false and are helping me spread the word. So thank you guys and have a good night.